Hey, church, it is Tuesday, March 17th, and I wanted to give you an update of what's going on around here at church and also give you a devotional for today that I promised I would do. So here we go. So, a little update of what's going on at church. We had a staff meeting yesterday, met with our school administrators and different people at church on staff, and it was just good to meet together and to check in. We talked about some of the things we're just afraid of with things going on right now in our world, and it was just good. We laughed a lot, and it was just good to see each other, and so that was cool. I wanted to let you know that happened. As you know, Bay Area has this shelter in place thing going on, and maybe that's going to move to Sonoma County. Things are grinding to a halt, it seems like. So, just interesting times. I want to talk about that a little bit today in our devotional, why things grind to a halt. And a couple things we're working on the church side. So, we've got a geek squad we're trying to put together with Jake Dolan, our lead geek, and trying to help people with their social media, some of their technology, if you need help with that. So, we're going to be putting that together. You'll be hearing more information about that. Also, we have putting together a task force to help with people that need food delivery or some type of grocery delivery to their home. Also, there could be potentially a daycare cooperative where we're helping nurses, doctors, police officers, firefighters, people that have to be at work and need some help with their children. So we're kind of working through some details for that. Um, and we had our deacons meeting last night, so we could talk about some of these things, getting our care lists up to date, make sure people are getting cared for. Um, so you'll be hearing more about that through the office, through with Leslie and Jill and Anita McGinnis. They're working on putting some of those things together. Today I'll be working on sermon for Sunday. We're looking at the denial of Peter in Mark chapter 14. There's certain steps that Peter takes to get to that third denial of Christ, and things that we could think about in our own life, where we think we're secure, we think we've got everything good with the Lord, and like Peter, there's ways that we miss certain things, and it causes us to do things we wish we wouldn't do. So, looking forward to studying that more, and that'll be hopefully a live service again on Sunday, like we did last Sunday. So right now there's not a gathering of physical people, but we'll do some kind of live service again this Sunday. So that seemed to go well last Sunday. Yesterday I met with Rhett Perro, chairman of our elder board, and we did a podcast. So that was our first official podcast. So Joe Dolan's editing that. That should be out to you. It's an hour and 18 minutes long. So I would just encourage you, hey, I'll bite off 30 minutes now, 30 minutes later, and 18 minutes down the road. But you just do what you want to do. But it was a great time with Rhett yesterday, just kind of digging into his thinking and thought processes, dealing with church, like strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, threats we have as a church, dealing with homeschooling. Rhett and Julie homeschool their kids, dealing with Rhett's defense of Martin Luther. Why does Rhett keep talking about Martin Luther? Really important figure in the history of our world. So, what else we talk about? It was a lot. It was good. Talked about his testimony. Talked about seminary and serving in the church and different things. So hopefully that'll go out and you'll enjoy that. Keep working on those podcasts. I think they're a nice way to get information out in a way that people enjoy listening to. So for one more thing I wanted to mention, if you're wanting more Bible, wanting more sermons, a couple people that I would recommend, John MacArthur is really good on YouTube. So if you just put in John MacArthur, it'll take you to a lot of his sermons are on there. Tim Keller, I would recommend. John Piper, Desiring God Ministries, I would recommend. Alistair Begg, their church in Cleveland runs through a website called Truth for Life, and so I would recommend Alistair Begg as well. Just faithful guys through the years, people I listen to and really appreciate. So recommend that. As far as devotional for today goes, I've been thinking about why are we so quick to shut things down? So, and I'm not just talking about coronavirus. I'm talking about smoke, fire, flooding. Some of the things that are just happening in our culture where things just shut down pretty quick. Like, I don't want to say it's an overreaction, but just especially the public sector seems to shut things down pretty fast. And I want to suggest 4 reasons why. One would be wisdom, like sometimes it's just good and smart to stay home. Another time, just a fear of the unknown, like we don't know what's going to come of this. And so, hey, let's just err on the side of caution. There also could be laziness, though, I think, in the heart of people when it's like, hey, I don't have to work today, let's not work today. Proverbs talks about, the lazy person says, there's a lion in the street, I'm not going to go outside. And so we make up kind of a bigger thing than what's real, and to neglect the things that we should be doing. And then another thing I want to think through with you, church, is just there's a desperate need for rest I see in our culture, and I see it with just the fast-paced life of Americans and also the stress load we put on ourselves. Part of that's living in a capitalistic culture. Part of that's pride. Part of it's just not understanding God's design for us as humans, and that's what I want to get to in this little Bible study. The culture, like if we live in a post-Christian culture, which I think we do, people aren't looking to God's word to know how to live. And so one of the areas that we might not think about is in the area of rest, where God, real clear, right? God in Genesis 1 created everything in 6 days. On the 7th day, God rested. And then as a model for us, we would work for 6 days and then rest on that 7th day. And so I'm going to actually read in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 12, observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your ox or your donkey or any of your cattle or your sojourner who stays with you, so that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there by a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. And so a couple things on there. First of all, just the importance of having a day to rest, and then also the idea of on that day of rest, remembering what God's done for you and delivering you out of slavery. For us as Christians, it's delivering us out of the slavery of sin and out of just the prison that holds us in. So remembering what God's done for you. Now, another part of the Sabbath rest that's interesting here is that God also commanded the Israelites to rest the land on the 7th year, to let the land rest, and so that it could recuperate and gain back the minerals that it needed to keep being fruitful. And so when you think about us needing rest and how we need to kind of recoup those things to be fruitful, and basically the idea is we can get more out of 6 days and resting on the 7th and getting just 7 days, 7 days, 7 days. So Israel obeyed that command for out of the 800 years they were in the promised land. They obeyed that for 310 years, but then for 490 years they disobeyed that land rest. And so part of God's judgment on Israel, taking them out of the land, was what was idolatry and some of the wickedness that they were doing and disobeying the Lord. But one of the things they were doing as well was not observing that Sabbath rest. So God said, you're going to be out of the land for 70 years. And each of those, when you didn't, for 490 years, you disobeyed, we're going to go back and the land's going to have rest now for 70 years. And so that was part of God's judgment, but also part of God's design for his land. And also it helps us understand, like sometimes when we just keep go, 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 sometimes God steps in and says, hey, we're going to rest. We need to rest. And so sometimes what we're dealing with now is just a need for rest for people. And sometimes God just steps in and intervenes there. So I would just encourage you to take the time to rest if you need that rest, and also just to get onto a better rhythm of 6 days of work, 1 day of rest, that God designed us to do. I would also just encourage you, with all the tech stuff going on and all the social media, sometimes you need to just take a rest from that and get off news, TV, and just let your mind rest. One of the things I learned with having this concussion that I had last year, I couldn't watch TV for a year. It just gave me headaches, or even to look at the computer or my phone. And a lot of that has to do with the lighting and the ways things enter into our brain that just aren't natural. So as you think about how much of this unnatural light, unnatural ways of gathering information, to be careful with that as well, and maybe take a rest from that too. So just some thoughts for the day, and hopefully that's helpful for you. We'll try to do this every day to just keep you in the loop, and hopefully this is helpful. All right, praying for you. Stay safe, church, and we love you.